All right, today we're talking about a really big problem. It's a critical shortage of just one single material, but it's so important that without it, our journey into the outer solar system could just stop.
So let's start with a question that sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie. How in the world do you power a drone on a moon that's 1.5 times billion kilometers away from the sun? I mean, out there, solar panels are pretty much useless. But this isn't just a fun thought experiment. It's the real challenge facing NASA's Dragonfly mission, which is literally a drone designed to fly around on Titan, Saturn's biggest moon.
And the answer to that question is really where our story kicks off. See, Dragonfly is supposed to be powered by the very last bits of a very special nuclear fuel. And the hard truth is, the United States has basically run out. Once this stuff is gone, these kinds of incredible boundary-pushing missions, they might just not happen anymore.
So what exactly is this miracle fuel, and why can't we just use something else? Well, the story starts in a place you might not expect, the Cold War.
Okay, let's get into what this stuff actually is. We're talking about Plutonium-238. Now, it's a man-made element, and it was actually created as a side effect of making nuclear weapons. But here's the thing. Unlike its very famous cousin, Pu-238 is a total dud for bombs. It can't sustain a chain reaction. Instead, it just gets hot. And it stays hot, giving off a steady, predictable heat for decades and decades.
And get this, what's really incredible is how small the difference is. Our space fuel, Plutonium-238, is separated from weapons-grade Plutonium-239 by just one single neutron. That one tiny particle is the difference between a terrifying weapon of war and an absolute lifeline for science.
And the legacy of this stuff is just wow. I mean, from the experiments the Apollo astronauts left on the moon, to the Voyager probes that are now outside our solar system and still talking to us, to the Curiosity and Perseverance rovers on Mars, Pu-238 has been the quiet, steady, beating heart inside our greatest robotic explorers. And this is where the problem starts. Back in 1988, the US stopped making plutonium for weapons. Now that was a good thing for world peace, obviously, but because our space fuel, Pu-238, was just a byproduct of that whole process, this decision had a huge unintended consequence. It turned off the only faucet for NASA's miracle fuel.
So with the production lines cold and the stockpile just sitting there, slowly decaying, NASA was in a real bind. They had to ask the tough question. Is there anything else out there that can do this job?
You know, they had a checklist, and the bar was set really, really high. First, you need a long half-life, but not too long, somewhere in that sweet spot between 15 and 100 years. Then, you need it to give off the right kind of radiation, mostly alpha particles, which are so weak you can literally shield them with a piece of paper. That's safe for the sensitive electronics on the spacecraft. And finally, you have to actually be able to make the stuff.
So first, they looked at polonium-210. It checks a couple of boxes, but that half-life, a complete non-starter. At just 138 days, its power would be cut in half before a spacecraft could even get to Mars. So, yeah, that's not going to work.
Okay, what about Curium-244? The half-life is great, right in the sweet spot, but the radiation is all wrong. It gives off nasty gamma rays and neutrons that would fry the spacecraft's brain unless you surrounded it with tons of heavy shielding. And besides, we don't even have the factories to make it. So, another dead end.
All right, third time's the charm. Gadolinium-148. On paper, this stuff looks perfect. Great half-life, safe radiation, it's the dream candidate. But then you look at how to make it, and it just fails spectacularly. You need massive, incredibly expensive particle accelerators, and the cost would just be astronomical.
So after checking under every rock, the conclusion was inescapable. Plutonium-238 isn't just the best option. For right now, it is the only option. It really is a miracle material. It has this unique blend of properties that makes it perfect for deep space, and there's simply nothing else that comes close.
So if you can't find a replacement, you're pretty much backed into a corner. NASA was left with just two choices: find a way to be way more efficient with the little fuel they had left, or figure out the ultimate recipe to make more of it from scratch. First, they tried the efficiency route. The generators NASA uses now are only about 7% efficient at turning heat into electricity. Not great. But for about a decade, they worked on this amazing new technology called a Stirling engine that could have hit 30% efficiency. I mean, that would have been a game changer. It would be like turning 1 kilogram of fuel into 4. But it just wasn't meant to be.
In 2013, after all that work, the project got the axe. A mix of budget cuts and some really tough technical problems just shut it down. So the dream of making the fuel last 4 times longer was off the table, leaving only one much, much harder option.
And that last option was to restart production from scratch. And let me tell you, this process is like modern-day alchemy. It's incredibly complex. It starts with another Cold War leftover, Neptunium-237. They press it into little pellets, then they cook it inside a special nuclear reactor. After that, chemists have to do this super delicate separation to pull out the brand new Pu-238, which then gets shipped to a totally different lab to be purified. It's a massive undertaking.
But here is the absolutely brutal catch. The process is fantastically inefficient. Inside that reactor, you're fighting a battle against physics. For every little bit of material that turns into the Pu-238 you want, a whole bunch of it gets completely destroyed by other reactions. A staggering 85% of your potential product just gets annihilated before you can even get your hands on it.
And all of this, the fact there are no good alternatives, and the incredible difficulty of making more, it all leads us to right now, to the precarious situation we're in today, where the future of deep space exploration is really hanging by a thread.
And this number right here, this tells the whole story. The current optimistic goal for U.S. production is just 1.5 kilograms a year. Now, to put that in perspective, a single big mission like the Dragonfly drone needs almost 5 kilograms, so you'd have to run the nation's entire production for more than 3 years just to fuel one mission. The math just doesn't add up.
And this isn't just about one cool drone on Titan. This shortage puts some of our most awe-inspiring future goals at risk. We're talking about probes to Uranus and Neptune, landers that could survive the endless night in a polar crater on the moon, the power systems for a future moon base. All of these incredible ambitions depend on a steady supply of Pu-238.
So when you boil it all down, this isn't really an engineering problem anymore. We know how to make the stuff. The real challenge is scaling up that production. And that becomes a question of economics and politics. It's going to require a serious global commitment and a whole lot of investment.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, right? We are standing on the edge of exploring worlds with hidden oceans and seeing the farthest corners of our own solar system. But our ability to take that next giant leap might depend entirely on our willingness to invest in recreating this one incredibly rare man-made element that can light our way into the dark.